SK or the fucking Ruger. Don't ever question if I got the heart to
As
shoot.
we must make the plans that we.
Welcome to another episode of the Uncensored Truth Podcast. I'm your brother, O-God, from Hip Hop News Uncensored, and sitting across from me is my co-host.
What it do was good. It's your brother Sam Ant, Viral Hip Hop News. We got a very special interview today. I want to first and foremost thank all the people out there on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and everyone out there who wanted us to do this interview in particular after seeing our commentary on the late Michael Jackson. Without further ado, we have Taj Jackson and Brandi Jackson, niece and nephew of the late, great Michael Jackson, on the podcast today. Taj and Brandi, how are you this evening?
Doing great.
Yeah, doing well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So we just want to start, first introduce yourself. Let us know exactly who you are and what's your relation to the late, great Michael Jackson.
My name is Brandi Jackson, and I am Michael's niece. And that's my direct relation, I guess. Yeah.
Who's?
Oh, my father is Jackie Jackson.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. And I'm Taj Jackson. I'm the nephew of Michael Jackson, and my dad is Tito.
Awesome.
Now, we obviously we know Michael Jackson's long storied career and his legacy. And one thing about his legacy, unfortunately, throughout the years, it's been tarnished by this black cloud, obviously, of child molestation, pedophilia, something that he's unfortunately had to carry along his legacy forever. Now that he's passed, 10 years removed, we hear something and see something about this documentary called Leaving Neverland. Mm-hmm. Talk about your first experiences in hearing about Leaving Neverland, the documentary.
So, my first experience with it, which I think is a little similar to Taj's, is we didn't learn about this until it was announced at the Sundance Film Festival.
Yeah.
So it was more of a shock. It just was pretty sudden and very shocking.
Mm-hmm.
And just waiting to see what it was that these boys were saying. Obviously from the trailers and the previews, we knew what the narrative was. So we were just preparing for a bunch of lies that we knew were coming our way.
Yeah, they pretty much hid it from everyone, and it was we were blindsided by it. No respect factor thrown in there at all. No heads up. No, do you want to? We want to get your side of it. They just basically, we found out just like everyone else.
Right. Now, how were you first introduced to Dan Reid, the director of the movie? And do you know his relationship to Michael Jackson at all, if he had one at all?
To my knowledge, he does not have one.
No, Dan found out, but Dan basically decided to do Leaving Neverland he was figuring out what he wanted his next big project to be. And he was looking at big names, and it came about, Michael Jackson and the Wade Robson, Jimmy Safechuck civil trial that was thrown out, and basically decided he wanted to make his career off of that. And so he's still learning about Michael Jackson. The fans and the journalists that are doing their jobs are very much informing him about all the inconsistencies, but he did not do his homework, basically.
And I have to say, I feel like he's still learning about Wade and James as well.
Oh yeah, he is, but he's just already made his bed. So
exactly.
it's one of those things. He won't say it, but he is. He's been caught in a couple of lies himself, and so the truth is slowly coming out there. But Dan definitely. I mean, we didn't know anything about Dan. Dan didn't know anything about us.
Now, what do you think is the motivation? Obviously we know it could be money. I heard you speaking on a few occasions, Taj, about a civil suit that appeals coming up, for what is the motivation between Wade Robson and Safechuck coming out with these allegations now after Michael's deceased, in your opinion?
In my opinion, well, definitely there's, as you said, there's the appeal coming up. That is very suspicious. They say they're not doing anything for money, but at the same time, they're suing for hundreds of millions of dollars. At the same time, it's always suspicious to me because it's always during a milestone of my uncle's. We had some tributes lined up, but now his 10-year anniversary, out the gate, they hit with this, and it's not a coincidence, in my opinion. This was planned in this way to tarnish him and to make sure that this 10-year anniversary becomes a negative cloud as opposed to a positive.
Now I hear that Brandi was actually dating Robson for 8 years. Can you speak on your relationship with him and how you know him and how far that goes back, if you may, please?
So he and I met in approximately 1991. We had done a few shoots together, the Black or White video, as well as the LA Gear photo shoot. So that was when we had met. And my Uncle Michael, being gracious to both of us, Wade had developed a crush on me and had asked my uncle if he would set up a situation where we could get to know each other better. So we spent about a week together, myself and Wade's family.
Where?
At Neverland. Mm-hmm. So we all went there. Spent, like I said, about 5 to 7 days. Mm-hmm. And at the end of that trip is when he asked me to be his girlfriend. So this was, like 91, 92 at the latest, when we really became official and started dating. And this went on until about 2000 or 2001. So we spent our entire teen life together.
Yeah. Which was left out of the documentary, of course.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And something that was, we didn't watch the documentary, but after just doing a bunch of research, we know certain things were omitted and the narratives were steered and things like that. Brandi, I want to talk to you about Wade Robinson's 05 testimony. And it's going to lead me to a 2-part question, because a lot of what the naysayers about Michael Jackson say after watching Leaving Neverland is why he had children in his room. One thing you guys cannot argue to me is why he had children in his room. So, Brandi, if you don't mind talking about that sworn testimony by Wade Robson in 2005, and then speak on why your uncle had children in his room. And was it just young boys? Was it just more like a sleepover? Just speak on it.
Yeah. So, they were like sleepovers, like slumber parties. And it's not that there were these boys just, haphazardly in his room and spending the night with him. If there were kids there was usually multiple kids. And it was rare that he would share the bed with everyone. But, occasionally everybody would just fall asleep watching movies. It was a very normal situation. There wasn't anything sinister about it. And in regards to Wade's testimony in 2005, is there something specific that you're referring to, or just the fact that he testified on behalf of him in general?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, he spoke on the whole room scene in general and said that you were in fact in the room with him, and that in fact that you were in relationship with him, things that weren't in the documentary. He had no wherewithal in saying at all. Right.
And that's part of the issue that I have with Wade's narrative. He didn't spend time with my uncle alone the way that he said he did. My uncle, first of all, is a very busy man. So when Wade and myself and his family would go to the ranch multiple times a month, my uncle was never there. So it's not that Wade was just being taken away and spending some private special time with my uncle and nobody else was able to access him. My uncle wasn't even at the ranch. This was just time that we all spent together, playing and relaxing at the ranch. So Wade's narrative of him being alone in this room with my uncle is not the way that it happened. And it really makes me sick that he paints it that way, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Right. Can we talk about Michael's character? Because we actually posted an interview we talked about Macaulay Culkin. Mm-hmm. He's kind of saying the same things, this is an old interview on Larry King, where you guys were pretty much, it was like an atmosphere where people were just having fun. Talk about Michael's character, because I hear people always saying that he likes to he's like a big kid himself. Can you guys speak on that, how you knew him?
Yeah, definitely. The reason I was laughing because it brings back actually really good memories. We had pie fights, we had water balloon fights. We would, I shouldn't say this, but we would drive by certain places and throw stink bombs at people, and then just crack up and laugh, it was very, very fun. But at the same time, it made me want to be a big kid for the rest of my life. And I've actually lived that way in terms of, I don't want to grow up like everyone else, what a grown-up is,
What society says.
Yeah, what society says a grown-up is. I think being a child at heart, you're taught racism. A child isn't born a racist. They're taught it, or you're taught about money and you're taught about, all these things. And so for me, I wanted to always be a big kid and be innocent like my uncle was in terms of an innocent heart. And I think was his downfall, is that people can't identify with that now. They don't have that in them. They don't see that. They're like, well, you said bed, so it has to be sexual. It has to be this,
right.
Well, to me, and growing up in that, I watched The Exorcist on, with my uncle on his bed with my brothers. It's like there was nothing sinister about that, but if now it would sound, like people would think it would sound.
Right. Just to extend on that, Taj, you said something on your Twitter that kind of resounded to me, and I want you to kind of extend on what you're saying now. You said a lot of the media are using different rules and guidelines for MJ in a desperate effort to rewrite history and his innocence. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, I think, the thing with my uncle is he knew what the barriers he was breaking in terms of, the awards he was breaking, the milestones he was breaking. He knew his job in that. He knew that he was breaking racial barriers in terms of the industry all over the world. But he also knew that he was a target in that way. And when we were brought up, he reminded us constantly. He said, because of your race, you're going to have to be 2 to 3 times better than other people are to get that same credit. He would tell us that all along, and he would say, watch, they're not going to give me this credit because they're going to give it to someone else. And we would see it. And that's what's happening now. They're trying to bury his legacy to make other people look better. And it's disgraceful. And, part of me is angry because we're helping them in a way, and I think that's been the biggest problem. Instead of giving someone the benefit of the doubt or looking for evidence or facts, they're just jumping on the bandwagon.
Right. Yeah. Now, from what I hear, were one of, if not both of you, supposed to do an interview on Good Morning America or something like that, and they rejected you. Is that true? Any truth to that?
Yeah.
We were both supposed to do it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Could you speak on that in the media's, of steering the narrative?
Yeah. And I won't reference them specifically, but as a whole, it's been very difficult to get this message out.
From the mainstream media.
Yeah. They won't take the story. Even though they understand that there are things missing from Wade and James's story, they're still running with it as though it's a factual piece of film.
Yeah.
So when we're trying to tell our side and tell our story, what we want the public to know about them, we're just being shut down, and it's very difficult to see this happen.
Yeah. And it's obvious to us, this is something that has always happened in that way. Is they have their narrative and they're going to stay with that narrative. I feel that Brandi is kind of Wade's kryptonite, and they've already claimed that Wade is the person they're going to go with. So Brandi's kept out of everything in terms of that. No one wants to interview Brandi in the mainstream media. So it's very frustrating for me to see that as well, especially someone that has dated someone for 8 years during that time period that they're alluding to. That is, to me, is ridiculous.
Now, Brandi, just talk about, Robson, and also, a little later, I want you guys to talk about, since Robson so much, some of the inconsistencies. Well, talk about him. Like, did you ever think that he would be, the type of guy, that would turn on the family? Because what type of guy is Robson? Could you speak on your relationship with him?
Yeah. So, it surprises me that he's doing this, that he's saying these things about my uncle. But his behavior overall doesn't surprise me. He has always been very narcissistic and very egocentric. He's a very self-centered person. So whenever he wants something, he doesn't really care who he's going to hurt in order to get it. Would I expect him to say that my uncle did these things to him? Absolutely not. They had a great friendship, a business relationship. I know for a fact that nothing inappropriate has ever happened to him. So for him to make these stories up, it's a testament to who he truly is. Yeah. And part of the reason why I had to break up with him was because of the way that he was treating me at the time. Sleeping with, there's a list of women I wish that I could list to you, but I'll list the one that everybody's familiar with. Sleeping with Britney Spears, the way that he did when she was already in a relationship with his friend is like the start of how he started to become the person that he is. I just have to say he has no type of remorse for anything he's ever done.
Yeah, he sees what he wants and he goes after it, and he doesn't care who he hurts, which is basically what he's doing now. And I think there's a sense of entitlement, to be honest. My uncle was very good to him, just like he was very good to us. But, once that stopped, all of a sudden, he feels entitled. He said, hey, look, I was the first defense witness in 2005. You owe me. That's what it seems like to me. He's basically saying, you guys owe me now.
And to piggyback on that, in 2009, shortly after my uncle passed away, I hadn't spoken to Wade and his family for years at this point, about 4 or 5 years at least. And his mother reached out to me first in attempts to get close to Paris, Prince, and Blanket. That was her mission, trying to figure out how to get these kids into her life. And then when I wouldn't budge on that, the next thing I knew was Wade was calling me, trying to figure out how to get back close to Paris, Prince, and Blanket.
Yeah.
And this is immediately after my uncle passes. If this is somebody that had been abusing you the way that you are now claiming he has, I can't imagine that this would have been at the forefront of your goals.
Yeah. And he went to the memorial. There's just a lot of things that are, I don't even want to say inconsistent. They're just like, the common sense things.
And this was him as a grown man. This isn't him as a child.
Nope.
Trying, not understanding what had happened to him. This is him as a full grown man.
Yeah.
And it seems like a lot of people are trying to become opportunists, and we've seen that throughout the years, and it began years ago. One thing in particular that I want to bring up is the 94 civil suit, obviously, with Joe Chandler. Now, a lot of people want to reference that now when it comes to leaving Neverland in the series because of the quote unquote hush money, because of the payouts and things like that. Please elaborate to the people, because we hear this throughout our comment sections in our commentary on Michael Jackson, the payout, the hush money. Talk about the hush money, the payouts, and just give a better perspective in regards to why Michael Jackson would do these things.
Yeah. Well, I talk on my own experience, because we were one of the first people in August of '93. We flew up to Asia to be with our uncle when he was trying to get extorted. Basically, the Chandlers were trying to extort him, and he was angry. He had that mission. He's like, I'm not paying them a dime. They're trying to do this to me, and he basically had that all the way up to pretty much, I think the settlement was in January. So he had his name. See, I think what he underestimated was the U.S. media's hatred, because all through those months, they were running stories about Michael Jackson being a molester, Michael Jackson doing this, and it was almost like they had already painted him guilty before he even got to do his own defense, and just kind of very deja vu of what it is now. And so he still fought this. He still fought it. And basically that was, the Chandlers wanted a civil case. My uncle wanted to fight the criminal case, because the criminal case is more important. So, but the Chandlers wanted the civil case to go first, which is now illegal in California to do. The civil case has. So his lawyers kept trying to push back the civil case. Said, we have to fight the criminal case. Well, they lost that motion, and basically that's what forced my uncle to basically get rid of the civil case, so that he didn't have to do the civil case first and then fight the criminal case, which is almost like seeing a sports team play a championship game. See them play before you play them. All the moves, all the witnesses, and it was an unfair advantage. So he said, let me get rid of this civil case and let me focus on the criminal case, because that's the one where I could go to jail and I know I can beat that. And so what a lot of people also don't know is they say hush money, but nothing stopped any of them from testifying in the criminal case. They just had no case, And what people don't want to say as well is that my uncle was subjected to a strip search and being photographed by the police of his genitalia down below. And what they're not telling you, which I've heard this story misrepresented many times, the description did not match. They keep saying the description matched. It did not match. And to the point where the Chandler's lawyer wanted to throw out that evidence. They wanted to keep that away from it. So don't you think if it matched, he would have already been in jail right now. If they would have had a perfect match, he would have been arraigned and in jail, and the criminal trial would have happened, and there's nothing to stop them from testifying. That's what people have to remember. There was nothing to stop them from testifying in 1994 or 2005.
Now,
so
could you just
hush money?
Right.
Well, say that one more time. We didn't get that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm saying there was no hush money, because hush money means you can't talk.
And they all talk.
Yeah, and you go to jail for bribery. You can't make a settlement for a criminal case.
Right.
People don't understand that.
Right. talk about some of the inconsistencies, pretty much what you accusing Robson. I know you know Robson more than the guy Safe Chuck, but talk about more so what he's lying about. I know you have to have a list, of things right now. Let the people know, please.
There really is a list, like you said, and to go through it, this 4-hour film of things that are completely out of timeline and out of context. It's hard to sit here and name each thing in particular, but he will reference certain time frames and say that something happened in that time frame when my uncle wasn't even in the States, or Wade and him weren't even in the same region, I could say. It's inconsistencies of that nature. Wade's timelines, and it's hard to.
Well, I think the thing is that he has multiple versions of everything. So
that too.
So it's almost like we don't know which one we're fighting, because he changes his mind on a dime, and basically they just go with it. First he said that he knew all along, and that he was in love with Michael, and that's why he didn't know it was abuse. Then there's another version where he says basically that Michael told him that it was wrong, and they go to jail. If anyone found out. So that's another one of his. But these are both stories that he's told. Then there's another one where he's claiming he didn't know until he had his kid that it was abuse. So he has multiple. It's like you don't know which one you're fighting at the time, and that's been the frustrating thing is no press. And I'm just saying they haven't held him accountable for his multiple versions. And this is within a 6-year period. Imagine he's made multiple versions in a 6-year period, which the Leaving Neverland's even another version. It's just ridiculous.
That's something I want to expound on, because that's one thing that we talked about in particular with Oprah after she did. She could or kind of followed up the Leaving Neverland and had Safe Check and Robson on. And one of the biggest things was why, especially in that position, Oprah, supposedly someone that's befriended Michael Jackson, was close. Why not cross-examine these two up here? Why not question their credibility? It was none of that. It was more narrative being steered. So one, talk about Oprah, what your thoughts were on that whole situation, and why, in your opinion, did you think that she never questioned the credibility of these two, given their shaky and rocky explanations each time they talk about it?
She was, if you saw she was feeding them. She was basically guiding them down a path. When they would say something, she would correct them in a way to make it sound like, oh, that's part of why you're a victim. And it's like, I have my own thoughts about it, because Oprah was also the one that, when my uncle passed, she wanted the exclusive interview with my grandma and the kids. And I was there, and she was talking about how Michael was misrepresented. No one understood Michael, and we were trying to get the real Michael. So I think in a sense, Oprah will say what Oprah wants to say to get the interview. And she's done that to our family many times. And so we have a different view of Oprah than everyone else does in that sense, because, we've been hurt by her many times in the past.
And like you said, she didn't even give 1 second to see the other side of it. As soon as that documentary was announced that it was going to be aired, it was followed up with Oprah's interview.
Yeah.
So we knew that interview was going to be happening with Oprah before we even saw the film.
Yeah. She blessed it. Basically said, this is the truth, and you guys run with it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's been the hardest thing, is that, all those people that follow Oprah blessed it as well without even seeing it beforehand. And it's just been frustrating for us, especially since there's plenty of people that Oprah knows that she could have done a special on. Yes. Someone very big right now that's in the news that no one's talking about, that she's friends with, Mr. Harvey Weinstein. And I feel that this is a bunch of smoke and mirrors in a way, that as long as we're talking about Michael Jackson, we're not talking about Harvey. And that's been the case with a lot of these so-called celebrities that are in for real trouble, is that Michael Jackson covers all of them in a way.
Right.
They want him to be the poster child, even though he's innocent.
And the only way to sell that is to bulldoze everything else that could potentially stop that.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. The media bulldozed.
They forced the narrative, basically. And then they had Oprah bless it. And so everyone just took it for truth.
Do you have any, does the estate of Michael Jackson have any, or seek any legal recourse for the defamation and the slander. Can you give the people an update on that? Have they, I know they tried to block, it for coming out on Sundance and HBO. Can you speak on that, please?
There is actually no legal recourse you can take for the dead. The dead cannot be slandered or libeled. So basically, there's nothing we can do. So that's something people should know right away. It's not that we're quiet and we're not trying to. Trust me, if there was a law on that, we would have sued them many, many times. But the problem is there is no law. So you can say anything about, anyone you want, from Elvis to Tupac to, Biggie. You can make up anything, and their families unfortunately cannot, have that recourse. And it's a shame, because we're our hands are tied basically, and we have to listen to these lies. And they used to use the word allege. They don't even need to use that anymore. And they freely don't use it anymore. They say he's a monster, he's a pedophile. They say all these things because they know that we can't sue them.
Yeah. Speak on that a little bit. Excuse me. I want you to speak on, if you don't mind, going through the years, knowing your uncle and hearing all these allegations, but from the outside looking in, just seeing nothing but love and just positivity come out of him and exuberate through him. How did he deal with all that backlash and all that negativity? Did it take its toll on him?
I think it did. I mean, I was around for 2005. I honestly feel that the 2005 trial killed him, before he passed. I think it killed his soul. It literally did. Him being there, you saw him deteriorate from that time period, for when he first went into the courtroom to when he left. He withered away, because it's almost like people chopping at your soul, basically, and knowing that something that you did not do, but the world, and I say the world, I'm talking about the media, wants you to be that person, and they're going to paint that picture on you, no matter what happens. Everything from him getting bit by a spider and then having to appear, pajamas, that became national. It's like he couldn't win. He found out he had 40 minutes to appear in court, and so he came the way he came, and it's like he can't win no matter what happens. And that's the thing with him, is that everything became a fiasco, and they had their mindset already, and it's unfortunate, because since I was there, I would talk to Tom Mesereau, which was my uncle's lawyer, every day after court, and I would say, "How'd it go, Tom?" And he would tell me, he's like, "Oh my gosh, we caught this person lying, this went well." And then I would turn on the news and I would see the complete opposite, and I'd be like, okay, someone here is lying to me. And I'm like, either Tom Mesereau is very comfortable and very naive, or the media is lying to me. And now I know, and I knew back then which one was the truth. And sure enough, the media was spinning it their own way.
Right. What do you say to the criticism, from people out there who will say, you guys get paid, you're just doing this for money? What do you say to that? You know what I mean? Because I know you guys have had your fair share of criticism, putting yourself out on more and more platforms. Could you please speak to that aspect?
Yeah, we're speaking out on behalf of our uncle because we know the truth. We know this man and what he stood for, and we're not going to sit here and let anybody tell it otherwise. Mm-hmm. We don't make any money from him, his estate, his legacy, any of those things. This is just out of pure respect and love. When you were raised a certain way, and you were raised to speak out when you know the truth, and that's what we're doing. Injustice,
yeah,
exactly.
And I think anyone, if they had a family member that they were accused of this, and they knew that that was not the truth, they would be doing the same thing we're doing right now. They'd be yelling at the top of their lungs. And so, just because it's Michael Jackson doesn't mean that we're not allowed to do this. And I think that's the biggest lie, is that people want us to be quiet. We're not going to be quiet.
And especially, these aren't, this isn't a random person that's making these accusations. Wade and James, we know their history. Mm-hmm. We know who they are. So that makes it even more personal for us. Yep. We understand what their motives are. Mm-hmm. So we have to speak on that.
Indeed. Now, recently, probably within the last couple of years or so, we've seen a number of celebrities, in particular, Black celebrities, going through trials, going through a lot of blame. Bill Cosby, R. Kelly. Now we see Michael Jackson be brought back up. Now, not to say that one is guilty, one is innocent or not, but when we talk about this on the podcast, we kind of go and ask the question, especially when race is involved. Okay, well, if there is something going on, the question would be why. And when we bring up Bill Cosby, obviously the ownership of NBC and things like that make you tend toward believing, okay, that's something. R. Kelly, maybe not so much. But when you think about Michael Jackson, okay, let's talk about the catalog. Let's talk about what he owned. Let's talk about a little bit of the power that Michael Jackson really had and why they were so hell-bent on destroying him.
You know, I think it's not only the power that he had, it's that he didn't conform. He couldn't be controlled. And I think that's what they feared. You know, I watched the Sam Cooke documentary where literally it was almost like deja vu. Sam Cooke couldn't be controlled. Sam Cooke wanted to be a pioneer. He wanted to help other Black, artists out. He wanted to own his own stuff, and they didn't like that. And that's pretty much the same thing with what happened with my uncle. They didn't like the fact, he was definitely, they never said it, but I guarantee you, he was the first billionaire, self-made billionaire Black person in terms of from Gary, Indiana, to where he ended up. He definitely was a billionaire. They never ever said he was a billionaire. But when you own a publishing company, half of a publishing company that's worth over $4 billion, then you're a billionaire. Just like they've named other billionaires recently, and I'm not going to mention their names, but they're in cosmetics or whatever. They proudly say they're billionaires. But, with my uncle, they never gave him that props.
They even tried to sell the opposite. They tried to say that he was broke.
Yep.
You know what I mean? When he passed, that he was, dying as a broke man. Like this, what? And
not only did they say that, but they don't even mention that he gave over $100 million to charities. Exactly. It's like, because that doesn't. If they want to say he died broke, but then say, oh, but he gave hundreds of millions of dollars to charity, that doesn't help their narrative. So they'll just make it sound like he didn't know what he was doing with his money. And so I think with my uncle, he was just he was a smart businessman. He owned his own music. He owned half of Sony's publishing. So basically, any Sony artist or any publishing, from the James Bond theme to he owned half of that, and he was just sitting there collecting it. And they did not like that. They did not like the fact that this guy had outsmarted them, basically, because they wanted the Beatles catalog. And so that to me was that's when all of a sudden all this started happening, was when he became so powerful and he didn't confine with what they wanted him to be.
Is this what you think the main objective behind the documentary and all the narrative is towards your uncle, is the fact that he would never conform?
And if you look at his later, his appearances later in life, he was fighting Sony. He was fighting about Black publishing, giving Black artists, back their publishing. He was very outspoken in all the stuff, and from "They Don't Care About Us" to all this stuff. He was ahead of trying to say, look, they don't care about us. And I think it was a threatening thing to a lot of people. Yeah. It was almost like, we need to shut this guy up.
And my personal opinion is that the documentary or the film is almost a marriage of a series of negative people with their own agendas, which just fell into place for them. I don't know that necessarily Wade and James care about the publishing.
No, they don't care.
You know what I mean? But they have their own personal interests, which falls in line with somebody else's personal interest. And then you get everybody together and you have this takedown.
Yep.
How does HBO, Sundance, how does this happen? Where they're able to, get the funding for this film and pretty much attempt to tarnish his legacy, Mike? I don't think it's going to work. But how does this happen without no legal recourse? Like, I don't get it. Could you speak to that? Once again, if you haven't covered all your bases with that one, like, there's nothing that the family can do at this point.
Not unless they include our names in something. Like, if they start talking like in terms of, we saw something that we didn't see, then we can go after them, because now they've included someone that's living. But as long as they keep it on Michael Jackson and only Michael Jackson, which they're smartly doing. I think they did that. They did say something in Oprah's interview that the press reported, but then when that special came out, it was edited out, which also makes me upset. The press did report on it ahead of time because it was shot earlier. But then when the broadcast came, where they did say that the family had to know and some of the workers had to know.
Right. And
they probably said, we need to cut this out because we can, there's legal recourse now.
But even with someone like Brett Barnes, they're not respecting his position.
Yeah.
who has tried to take legal action against HBO for including his name in this narrative as though he were a victim as well.
Yeah, they implied that, and Brett's angry. Brett's looking, for legal recourse because they did include his name, and he asked to be taken out. He said, "I don't want to be associated with this. This is not who Michael Jackson was. These are two entitled people that are basically using his name to try and get money, and I want to be out of this." And they didn't even respect his request in that, which means they don't really care about anyone except themselves.
Indeed. Well, I mean, we've seen the numbers, and just speak on the numbers of the documentary, because out here, like you in social media and media alike, you would think that it's tearing and destroying Michael Jackson's name down. But in reality, the numbers flopped. They were garbage. No one really even watched the documentary, like Oh God and I alluded to. We didn't even see it. We didn't watch it. So just talk about the numbers, and did the objective get served in your opinion there?
Well, I think what we're seeing is that the media, if they want to sell something, they'll sell it with a lie as well. We know the numbers didn't do well. They didn't do well worldwide. They flopped everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I mean everywhere. But the media won't let you know that. The media makes it sound like this is the biggest thing that's ever happened. Then Michael Jackson is canceled. And then you find out, nope. His streaming is just as big as it ever is. And so they're trying to sell you on him they're trying to imply like, you need to cancel this person. You need to do this. You need to do that. This celebrity's talking against him. They're trying every little trick they can try. But, I think people, especially his supporters or the people that have gone through this stuff before, that don't trust the media or don't trust being spoon-fed stuff, we're a little wiser than that.
And all it takes is 10 minutes on the internet to do a little bit of research to find everything that they're saying is not true.
Yeah, so it really does take that little time to just search.
Yeah, it resonated with us because we like Mike, but we're not invested into it to the point where he could do no wrong. As soon as we heard it and we sifted through the facts, we was like, this is some BS. Our platform, because we're independent, to speak the truth. That's what we're going to do. And I want to commend you guys also, for doing that as well, because I would want somebody to do that for me, if I was, deceased as well. So I want to definitely commend you guys.
Indeed on that. Talk about real quick before, because I don't want to have many more questions. We really appreciate you guys' time. But you alluded to a couple times Michael Jackson, your uncle, talking about you have to work extra hard being who you are, being what you look like. And then we heard later on in Mike's life, him speaking on black publishing and things like that. But often in the media, another narrative was stared as though he wasn't proud to be black. He wasn't, he was running away to bleach his skin. We heard everything, all the negative stuff. Talk about how he identified to you guys, how as a person, it's best as you can, not to be disrespectful.
I'm laughing because my uncle, if you really knew him, he could hang with the best of us, in that way. And I don't want to go into any stereotypes, but he fulfilled all those stereotypes. He was very proud of his race.
Yes.
And anyone and where he came from, and anyone that questioned that, he would correct them right away. He did that in interviews. He did that live. He never ever said he was not proud to be black. If the opposite, he said, I know who I am. I'm black man. And he was proud of that. And he would tell us that. Yes. We saw it by example. That was the thing. It wasn't just him saying it. We saw that by example. He knew what he represented. And that was the media. I think that was the media's best trick that they did, besides this whole allegation thing, was convincing people that Michael Jackson wasn't proud of his race. Right. That was when they got a lot of people, because his vitiligo was what they used in that way. And that vitiligo is, which a lot of people didn't understand, but that vitiligo messed him up in a way where, it was very frustrating in that point, because he understood what they were trying to do. And he couldn't help the skin condition that he had. And
for somebody like him who is larger than life, his image is everywhere. And when your color changes, and this is who you identify as, you have to deal with that. And you have to be able to stand up and tell people, no, this is still who I am. But like you said, with the media turning it, what are you supposed to do? Yeah, and it's like you saw it even in Remember the Times. It's like when it came to Black royalty or Egyptians, he made sure it was Black people. He said, no, this is the history of what it is. It's Queen,
Cleopatra was black. You know,
Exactly.
he was very proud of that, you know, in terms of changing history in that way, in terms of what people thought. And so that was our uncle. That was us growing up. He always did that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, I mean,
I got a little angry there. It's like, but it's true though. It's like, you know, that's been the biggest frustration for me is I hear that and I see it on message boards and I see that and it's like, you know, you have to look at what he's done as a black man and what he's given back as a black man. You don't listen to what the media says he's done.
Exactly.
Look at what he's done, you know, and he's always given back. He's always fought for us in that way as well. I mean, yeah, it's like, oh.
speak on it, man. Now I'm very happy you're saying it because these are things we don't hear.
Inner city kids, you know, Boys and Girls Club, he donated a lot to them. He would always have them up at Neverland, 300 to 400 kids by the busload to give them a day of just hope and inspiration. You know, that was who my uncle was. And the frustrating thing is that that's never reported. You know, you have to search for that. You have to look very hard for that. But my uncle was very, very, very proud of his race. Very, 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 I want to say country, because he had a country vibe to him.
He was.
And everyone that, you know, the family got to see it, you know, because we're behind closed doors, we're a pretty country family in that way. And we're proud of it in that way, because we're proud of our race. And I've always been proud of my race. And I will continue always to be proud of my race, because, you know, I feel, I was going to say something, but, you know, we're talented, we're smart, we're threatening in a way.
And we've overcome a lot.
And we've overcome a lot, and we overcome even more obstacles. And I think that's the thing for us. So I've never been more proud in terms of that, in terms of my uncle and his, you know, his race.
Absolutely. So, you know, in closing, what's next? I want you, you know, to let the people know what's next, you know, for the Jackson estate, the family, and also what you want the people to know, if anything that we missed as well. Both of you guys can go or whatever.
You know, for me, again, the one thing that I just ask of people is to just do their research. For anybody who's skeptical or doesn't know what to believe, I understand that the media has thrown one side at you, but just take 10, 15 minutes and do a little bit of research. And that's what I ask of people personally. As far as what the estate's next move is, I can't really speak for them. I know that, you know, my goal and Taj's goal is to really just spread this message of who he is, who he was, and who these accusers are and what their goal is.
Yeah. It's just to be his voice. You know, he's no longer here to defend himself. And I think that was purposely done in that way, where he can't defend himself. And so we're trying our best to do that for him.
Indeed, well, we sincerely appreciate all your time. You've answered all my questions in full. I really appreciate it. This is an honor on behalf of the platform to have you guys on here. You're always welcome to come on the platform. Just give me a call or got a call and you're on it the next day. And we mean that. But yeah, just thank you so much. If you want to give your social media handles or where they can follow you or reach you at, you're more than welcome to do so right now as well.
Sure, yeah. On Twitter, I am bjackson82, and on Instagram, I'm Brandi Jackson82.
I think Taj Jackson.
I know.
3.
I think
Taj Jackson 3 on Twitter, and just Taj Jackson on Instagram. But we want to thank you guys too, just for not just going with the narrative, just doing your own research and being a voice in that way. You guys have been outspoken in a way, just in terms of just saying, hold up, you know, let's wait and let's look at the facts. And I think that's all we're asking. Yeah. We're not asking you just say, just believe us. We're saying, look at the facts, or at least do your own research, do your own homework. Don't just take someone's blessing for it.
And as an outlet for giving us a chance to speak.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
That we appreciate it, you know, as well. You know what I mean? We wish you guys, you know, all the best of luck. Like I said, our platform, we have 3 of them, always open. If you want to come, you know, do whatever you want to do. And, you know, good luck in your fight. I mean, keep going.
Thank you so much. Take care, guys.
Thank you so much. You take care, guys. Thank you.
Peace.
West K or the fucking Ruger. Don't ever question if I got the heart to
As
shoot.
we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back.
They say the the best things come from the worst shit. This all facts, this ain't no verse shit. I done fought the state on some verse shit. Feeling like Franklin the day he touched his first brick. First trip, I did 95 all night.